Using mobile devices to facilitate error correction. For the last 5 years, I've taught English to both adults and children. However, right now my teaching focus is on adult ESL and EFL students who are enrolled in classes like the ones listed on this slide. Before going into my activity, I'd first like to discuss the theoretical framework for both mobile and language learning. Mobile learning, as explained by Sharples, Taylor, and Vavola in their 2005 article, must take into account the ubiquitous nature of how current technology is used, in addition to being centered around 4 key points. First, learning must be learner-centered, meaning it should build on previous knowledge. Secondly, mobile learning needs to be knowledge-centered or efficient and having an inventive curriculum. Third, it should have a continuous formative assessment, such as qualitative feedback from the teacher to students to help them further their learning goals. And finally, learning should be community-centered, meaning that the learners share knowledge with one another in order to complete tasks together. Now, learning a language is similar to the points above, but I'd like to add in some more SLA theories that are specific to language learning. First, both Vygotsky and Long agree that language learning best happens through interaction and through the construction of knowledge with the help of peers and teachers. However, SLA theorists also believe that, especially for adults, language learners require corrective feedback in order to improve accuracy. Because of this, it is vital for language instructors to catch and explain errors that students make when they speak or write. Now, although error correction is one of the most important jobs language teachers have, it is also one of the most difficult parts. One of the techniques I've learned is to divide a paper into 4 quadrants. 3 are for errors in grammar, pronunciation, and vocabulary, while the final one is for bravo or great sentences students have used. At the end of a task, one goes over these errors as a class, or you can type them up and have students correct the errors in groups the next time the class meets. The picture here is an example of what this might look like. Now, while the systematic error correction is very helpful, it takes a lot of time to go over. And additionally, it's not permanent. Either I write it on the board and it's erased, or students eventually throw the papers away. So because of these problems, I've devised a mobile learning activity using the Google Docs app on smartphones for error correction. The objectives are threefold. First, for the teacher to be able to share errors with students for them to correct. Secondly, to save class time by outsourcing the error correction as homework to be completed outside of class. And third, using an online Google Doc will enable the class to save a record of their class errors that can be easily searchable and downloadable, allowing students to reflect on which errors are more prevalent than others. This in turn helps the teacher and students pinpoint weaknesses in their language abilities. In order to complete this activity, everyone in the class would need Google accounts and a smartphone, though the teacher would probably like a phablet since the screen would be larger to type on. Now, let's take a walk through what this might look like. This isn't perfect, so please bear with me. While students are working on a task, the teacher would, as usual, walk around the classroom to answer questions or provide help. However, instead of using a pad and paper, the teacher instead would use the Google Doc app on his or her smartphone to type up student errors. After class, the students are assigned to correct the errors and must write, to the best of their abilities, reasons why they made those corrections in the reply section of the suggestion box. At the end, the teacher accepts or makes his or her own corrections to the errors in the document. They can either just accept the suggestion or actually explain why or why not the suggestion was incorrect. One alternative would be to have another student actually do step 3. Granted, the teacher would still need to moderate, but it would be one more way to practice peer feedback. Now, although I believe that this activity would be very meaningful for students, I am aware of some potential problems. First, this type of activity would require students to have training with Google Docs, requiring a carefully scaffolded training session. Secondly, students might feel anxiety when making corrections in case they were incorrect. Teaching students to use expressions like I think or I'm not sure but maybe in order to show that they are sharing theories of knowledge and that they could be possibly wrong might alleviate some of this problem. And the last pitfall is unavoidable in some cases. It just might be that some students and or teachers don't have access to the tech needed to do this task at all. However, if the teacher has a smartphone and the students have access to computers, they still might be able to use these computers to finish the task, though of course it would be better if they could use smartphones to do error correction on the go. So in conclusion, it's the goal of all language teachers to increase the amount of time students are engaged in using the target language outside of class, and hopefully this will be one more way to accomplish this goal. Thank you very much.